So thank you, Usman. And my name is Juan Duran. I'm the CEO of EcoRegistry. We are a registration platform that focuses on working together with different standards and countries to safeguard all the information that support the carbon credits. And at the end, then after the issuance, then connect the carbon credits to different exchanges. Thank you.
Great. Hi, my name is Ariana Fowler. I am the head of research at Equity Lab, and we use cryptographic technologies to build responsible AI pipelines. And we also are a founding member of the Endowment for Climate Intelligence, which we just launched on Monday. And our flagship product is a climate task-specific large language model called Climate GPT.
Hello, my name is Venkatesh Sarma. I work at Vera as a Senior Director of Technology Solutions. At Vera, within my team, we are working on multiple tools and technologies to enable scaling and ensure integrity of carbon markets. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Idrissa Diatta. I am the coordinator of the project management unit in SONAGED. SONAGED is the national company dedicated to waste management. I'm as well an Article 6 executive implementer. We have partnered with Alcott in Senegal to build Article 6 project, which is undergoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Idrissa. And I think as you can see in the panel, we have some very knowledgeable experts who can definitely talk about this issue of validation and verification. That is really important for project development in the carbon market area. But I will start this panel by asking a few questions to our panelists. I will start first with Mr. Venkatesh. Can you share with us on how you see the market evolving with digital tools? How do you see this evolving in validation and verification? And can this lead to further scaling in the voluntary carbon markets?
Sure. We have been working with validation and verification of carbon projects and data for the last 2 decades. And the sticking point in the process is how do we ensure the data is correct and the projects are integral? And technologies can certainly make things easier if correctly applied. So in terms of validation and verification, there are certain things that we may not be able to solve with the technology right away, but identifying incorrect data, incorrect process are certainly possible. And we don't need to spend a lot of time by undertaking manual tasks for those. Correctness of data, completeness of data, and whether the data appears to be normal can be done automatically. However, certain processes like did we really have impact on the ground may not be immediately validated with the technology. Of course, we can put cameras and sensors in all these on the ground like in forestry projects, but that is going to be too costly. So in terms of validation and verification, technology can certainly aid our validation process, and that can help scale things. If we don't need to do certain things manually, we don't have to do it. So that's how we can actually achieve scaling in this process.
Excellent. I think it's really important to have this available because from my experience, I used to work in the Senegalese Rural Electrification Agency, and we have one CDM program of activities. And in terms of monitoring of this program of activity, we had to have detailed data regarding energy consumption for each household. And unfortunately, the power utility does not have an appropriate database to monitor all this energy consumption on a monthly basis or yearly basis. So it was really challenging to deal with that. Whereas with some digital solution, you can have it on real-time basis and monitoring can be streamlined, and I think verification also would be really feasible for developing countries like ours where we face many challenges. Now I'm turning to Mr. Juan David. Can you share with us steps Ecoregistry is taking, and what are the opportunities you see in ecosystem like Hedera's? How do you see this changing time to market for project developers? Can this be applied to co-benefit frameworks?
Perfect. Thank you. Actually, one thing that I like from Hedera is when we built Ecoregistry, and we started in 2016, we built it as a modular system where you can upload all the information about the projects, and it goes on a stage by stage where there is an approval process, or if there are some change requests, then you can do it through the platform. Hedera actually thought of developing like some kind of an open source solution for those specific processes. That's why they call with the policy definitions and all the process that they do to issue the units. And then once each one of the processes is fulfilled, then you can issue the credits, but that credit is bound together with all the information that supports each one of the units. That's right now we're doing it on a manual approach. So we fulfill some Excel sheets or some PD files or Word files or whatever, and we have all this information. But in the future, what Hedera is also doing, or what the HPAR Foundation are doing, is building this ecosystem so that we can actually bring the data from the field and we can feed in the data directly to the system. For that, you need to check that the data is correct. You need to check that the data is the right data to quantify the emissions reductions or all the mitigation activities. And then afterwards, you need also to make, for example, comparability between different projects and stuff like that. And that's very important because that will enhance integrity in the whole market. And I believe that's why Hedera's approach to the ecosystem will bring some integrity, because it will give some foundations so that we can have standardized information to compare and apply data analytics in different projects.
Now, another question for you and Mr. Bentesh. Considering the issue of transaction costs for developing countries like ours, for example, in West Africa, mainly for West African Alliance countries, where we are facing many challenges to have this validation and verification done for our projects operating on the ground. So how do you see developing countries like ours to have the possibility to streamline and to make it more easy for us in this context of Paris Agreement and the Article 6 operationalization process? What can you see as main advantage of this digital solution and possibilities?
Okay. So certainly, when we have a right tool in front of us, the process becomes easier. If you look at the current scenario, there are certain VVBs, validation and verification bodies, who are well equipped to make these process efficient already, but not all of them are there yet. Most of them, I would say, are still looking at manual process of how to validate, how to verify. As we are investing into technologies for project developers, we are also working similarly with the VVBs. So what we can provide, what we must provide to VVBs is the right tool and technology so the process can be integral and simpler. One certain examples that we can look at is, let's say we want to validate a project and that project has some data. What if the same data is available to VVBs as well in their own system? Then they don't have to be comparing the same data as a copy, but they should have a certain tools that does the same estimation utilizing available tools and technologies and data itself, and they can say, yes, this is valid or this is not valid. And we call that as a monitoring system. We are investing in monitoring system as well. So if the projects come to Verra, we are creating digital tools where we are monitoring the boundary throughout the year. If we can give that tool to VPBs, they can actually see, yes, boundary exists, and they could do some additional steps. Providing right data is the key in the digital format. If you just draw a diagram or map on a paper and put that in a PDF, VPBs won't have any real use of that except for visual inspection. But if that data is available to VPB, they may overlay that particular file, even in the Google Earth engine that is freely available. They can look at the latest data. These days, satellite images are mostly free. They can just create a tool, overlay the data, and check for information to validate them quickly. So certainly, every actor in the process of carbon project development would benefit from digitalization.
Yeah, so I will resume some of the points and also one important point that I believe. So I come from Colombia and I have believed how projects need the cash flow. So for me, it's the first thing is automating processes always generate some costs reduction for the project developer, for the VPB, and actually that's for one thing. The second thing would be the integrity, because once you have all the information with direct measurement, directly fed into the registration platform, then you will be, you can have direct access to what is happening on the project. That's the second thing. And then something that it's not talked about a lot, but the speed. When you have all this information system integrated and then you have algorithms quantifying all the tons of CO2, then you have also better speed, and then you can issue credits maybe in real time. You can issue in a monthly basis or in a 6-month basis. And cash flow for projects is very important because they now, for example, that the market prices are low, the communities have not received income for, I don't know, maybe the last year, the last 2 years, and they have to live with all that money from the last, from that issuance that they had before. So that time is very important because, as I don't know who is sitting here, but we all know that companies, they get broken for cash flow. And the same is for communities. They need the cash flow to do everything.
Another follow-up question is, for example, in the Global South and specifically in our region, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we don't have VVBs, local VVBs. We still rely on the Global North for validation and verification. Do you think that with this opportunity, we can fast-track the process of having local VVBs in our sub-region? How do you foresee this to you? I will come to Idrissa and Ariana. I have some few specific questions for you, just to end this part of VVBs, if you.
Yeah, one thing that also happens with digitization is that the communities will have the chance to give the data directly and go through the process and have more access to how the process is done. That will also ease the work of VVBs, and that will give opportunities for the same communities or organizations by communities or associations or of some kind to develop like their own VVBs that are focusing more on the aspect of the community, what they are doing, and they understand the community. And but all the, let's say, all the ISO compliance can be done by the information system. Like all those ISO compliance can be wrapped up on an information system, and they can focus on other aspects, and that will make, I would say, like a fast track for local VVBs to happen. And I can imagine, so in Colombia, it's already happening, or in Latin America, like local communities or associations are starting to build like some kind of organizations that watches what is happening on the projects, and they are like a third-party validator at the end.
Thank you, Juan. I'm always thinking about the capacity issue in our region. But this led to me to ask this question to Mr. Idrissa Diatta from Sonaged, Senegal. You have an IT background, and you are also involved in one of the most promising project in the sub-region with the waste sector. Can you share some of the challenges and how you are addressing them in the context of Article 6.2? How do you partner to enable validation and verification with this limited guidance on 6.2, Article 6.2 setting? We know that you are pioneering a very interesting project in Senegal. And can you tell us a bit more about this issue?
Okay, thank you very much. It will be quite difficult to highlight all the issues or challenges we are facing when we talk about digital in general. But to answer this question, I will maybe break down my thoughts into layers, as I'm saying. First of all, at certain point, we straightly talk about developers, VVB, DOE, etc. But we might forget, and especially when we talk about the Article 6.2, that governments are involved, first. Second, we are talking about NDCs and how to fulfill the commitments within the NDCs. And if we talk about our NDCs, for instance, we have a conditional part and an unconditional part. And somehow, at a certain point, even if we want to submit these projects for transactions, we have to make sure that we have fulfilled our commitments in the unconditional NDCs. How to, at the project level, we can see it, and we can have this global status where we really know that the project we are implementing is targeting the unconditional and is like surpass the unconditional to be in the conditional options within the NDCs. So if we see that, the first challenge is to have a global overview comparison with the commitments in the NDCs and the current projects which is going on when we talk about emission reductions. And I'm talking about the sectorial level. For instance, in waste management, we will have we have this specific project for composting in Touba. And in the documents, it says like it will reduce X amount of emissions. What is the contribution for the specific projects in the global sectorial NDCs for waste management? And we will build several of them as well around the country. Somehow it will be aggregated, and how to monitor exactly to see if we are on point or not. And if I take it further at the government level, somehow we will see all the sectors. We have to see all the sectors, what is the contribution in the project side, aggregating at the national level. So the issue, if we identify well, will be a need. The need is to see at the government or at the national scale where we are as a South country in this commitment from the NDCs. Before talking about the Article 6.2, which is like the capacity and the opportunity to do transactions with the emission reductions. So we have to elevate a little bit. And then if we identify our need, naturally digital can enhance and allow the possibility to have all this dashboard for the projects going on. So the initiative like Hedera can help to look at it from the bottom-up approach, where we can really identify the needs and build the platforms which fits the needs. Then I can challenge, and I want to challenge a little bit even the approach. Because I like, in one panel, Hanya was saying the difference between digitalizing things and going native digital. And it is critical, because it can quite be different. Why I want to challenge that is that maybe if we rethink native digital, VVB will not exist anymore. And why not? You tackle the question of we don't have VVB in Africa or in Senegal, and it costs a lot. Digital can like bridge the gap and really erase it. Maybe what I'm challenging right now is that because we are seeing it traditionally, and in the traditional area, we have actors, we have stakeholders, which we really have roles and responsibilities. But somehow, if we think native, digital native, maybe these actors won't even exist anymore. And we have to think about it. And what we even can go further than that. Maybe we have to have like unified methodologies, or something. Vera is there, maybe he will do not agree with that, but somehow maybe we have to rethink all these in order, because in the climate in the climate change globally, we are talking about having the same criteria for all. How can we have the same criteria? My reference is the NDCs, right? And the aggregated NDCs towards the 1.5 degrees. So if we go through that, maybe we can rethink things and it will help us out. That's why I'm saying if we take at certain layers, we have specific needs, and these are the issue. And if I go straight to waste management, the needs are to identify our projects, because there is a need of monitoring, to aggregate them and to see what exactly we are going forward toward our commitments in the NDCs and through Article 6. And yes, definitely, if the Article 6 itself, in the policies design way, is not stable and it's not clear, we cannot think about digital, because somehow in the process we're doing and design things, it comes from the ground and from the reality, and then digital is just a space which can speed up things and enhance transparency and the productivity. And going to the identification of the stakeholders, we even miss the population. In most of these tools, maybe if the government integrated, it's great, but we're talking about VVV, project developer, and validation, etc. But where is the part and the contribution of the local community? So we have really to integrate them, because in our projects in Tuba, what we want is somehow to distribute the revenue for the local communities. But the question is how digital can help if we don't take it into consideration.
Okay. Excellent. So now I'm coming to one of the most important issues these days, and I think we even had a very hard session on technology because of the AI issue that was brought in the negotiation this year. So we almost avoided a Rule 16 during the negotiation because of AI issue that parties want to add in the technology agenda item. So Ariana, can you speak a bit about the role of AI in climate data, and how can this be used to further verification of carbon credits?
Sure. Well, I think it might actually be an inverted question. How can climate data play a role in AI, right?
Exactly.
You can't have AI without data. And I think earlier we actually, the panel, 2 panels before lunch was speaking about data availability. And I think that that's a very critical point to address, especially if we're talking about capacity building and local deployment of these technologies, ensuring we have localized tools for data collection. We talked about databases. That's essential to having AI that's meaningful, and having data that is legitimate and credible and can be verified using things like Hedera, for example. Provides a really strong foundation for AI. Really quickly though, I'm not as familiar with, you were mentioning that it was part of the negotiations. Can you speak to what the AI contingent point was in the negotiations?
No, it was a new topic that is brought on the technology discussion, because AI must be introduced in the topic of technology transfer as one of the key issues that parties should take into consideration. So in the past it was not well considered, but now we wanted to have it as an agenda item in the technology.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if it was controversial.
And
And many rooms, it depends on where you're at,
Exactly.
what people speak about AI. But I think there's a few different types of AI when it comes to climate that we can speak about. We can speak about geospatial data and imagery. And so when we're talking about validating and verifying programs for carbon credits, right, it's looking at reforestation, for example. You want to validate that actually the projects are doing what they say, so you use satellite imagery to do so. I think when we talk about processing large amounts of reports and information that maybe these governing bodies are producing and that the organizations, again, for capacity building, need to be able to process to implement, that's where things like generative AI, so things like ChatGPT or Climate GPT, it can actually be really helpful in making these really technical documents that are also really long, not necessarily the most human readable, making them accessible to people so that they can actually be able to implement the recommendations that a lot of these really brilliant researchers have put into place. And so I think at a local level, when it comes to regulators or when it comes to local community members who are wanting to ensure that they're doing the right thing, AI can help them actually synthesize the information in a much more efficient way. And I think AI also at that level can play a role in machine translation. And so making sure that documents that are likely not produced in every language possible from a UN perspective can actually be translated to a localized context. When it comes to the second question, which I think was about carbon credits and validating carbon credits, I think that comes at the project level. So in terms of actually setting the standards and making sure that the project is aligned with standards, again, that can come with digesting these documents, but then it can also come at the point of synthesizing the data depending on the type of project that you want to track. So I think it is a really efficient tool, but however, humans have to remain at the center. I don't think it should eliminate human capacity. I think it actually should be seen as a way to augment human decision making. But we have to ensure that the tools are also connectivity is a really large issue, and a lot of these like hyperlocal, we're speaking about the global south, if you don't have internet connectivity, it can be quite challenging to deploy some of these advanced artificial intelligence tools. So similar to what you were saying, that we may need to pull up a few levels before we get to the idea of digitization. I think we also need to bridge the digital divide in a lot of these areas to really activate the potential of these technologies.
You mentioned the issue of Climate GPT. Interesting, because the language barrier is something that is really, really challenging for us, developing countries. I think in most of West African countries, whenever we had this kind of workshop on Article 6 on carbon markets, this issue is put on the table. The only language is English, and in our sub-region we have Portuguese, we have French, and we are struggling to understand the guidelines, the book. So do you think that this could be a real chance for us to fill this gap?
Absolutely. So earlier during our panel discussion and preparatory discussion, I mentioned the tool Climate GPT that I alluded to earlier. We worked with our partner AppTech, and right now the tool is available in 22 languages because something that we think is important when it comes to, and specifically this is a large language model, so it's not for, again, imagery, geospatial imagery, or looking at like necessarily emissions data, things like that, but looking at like high volumes of text. It's really important that people can make use of the text, excuse me. And so AI is really powerful in allowing machine-generated translation. And so while 22 does not cover the span of the globe, it is far more than just English and French, which are the UN kind of official language, and Spanish, UN official languages. So I think another tool besides just the language translation is actually getting human feedback on the tool itself, and so ensuring that the translations are effective, because you can have a translation, but if it isn't, if it's not actually a translation that's useful, you need to be able to adapt for that, and so that's something too that should be taken into consideration with translation, because it is still machine generated, so you need human feedback.
Interesting. But let's give a bit of time for the audience to ask a few questions before we end the session. Any burning question from the audience? Yeah, please.
Can Hello. Okay. I'm Claudia. I'm from France. My question is for you on regards of the standards to create this climate GPT, because we also use AI to enhance our PD productivity. But one of our main challenges is that there are no standards in the market. So I would like to know if you could elaborate a little bit about how you guys are gathering all this information without having so many standards, or how you're facing this challenge.
So standards for like data collection to train the model? Or?
Exactly.
Okay. So we focus on, for Climate GPT specifically, there were there's open source data, right? That's kind of I would say the standard that we at the Endowment for Climate Intelligence, which we established to govern Climate GPT, are emphasizing and are leaning forward into. So the idea with open source data is that there is a license that allows that information to be used for anyone around the world. And so I think open source is really important to the work that we do. We also did train with some proprietary data for Climate GPT. We had a data partner that had high quality climate data that's proprietary. I think for standards, it depends on the licensing body. So we also work with Creative Commons, and they're one of the main bodies that produce them. The CC license, if you see with open source, CC is Creative Commons. So they do a really great job at setting those legal standards for licensing, and so we work closely with them. I think we are, as a high level at a standard, like open source is the way that we believe it should go. So whether that's open source models, open source data, because that's the best way to actually accelerate development and progress. But I understand that right now that there's a lot of questions around how, what is open, and there's different definitions of that. And of course, I think earlier someone actually mentioned, I think it was the blockchain panel right before lunch, ZK proof, or zero knowledge proofs, which is a blockchain technology, uses cryptographic technologies to ensure that the data can be validated without revealing the information. So it's a way to keep information secure and private. That's also really important. Not everything necessarily should be open, but I think when it comes to things like climate data, I do believe that open is the standard we should hold ourselves to. Was that helpful? Okay.
One more question, please.
Thank you. I'm Michael from Lesotho. We do carbon projects since 10 years on CDM Gold Standard. Now, if you go the direction of digital, do you still see the need to have on-site visits by the VVPs after validation? Or what is the frequency? Because you trust on the digital, there's always mishap in data. So how do you verify or validate the verification?
Okay, thank you. So, Alexis from Goldcut. So we have two standards with us today. We've been told during COP that we're missing about 280,000 billions of CO2 to meet our NDCs. So evidently, carbon has a very important role to bridge the gap. So we're going to need to multiply the carbon by, a large number of fold. Is it really necessary to have? How open are you to AI to bridge the gap in validation and verification? And at what point do we need human interaction, when it's a cognitive approach or when it's a mechanic and scientific approach in the ton of CO2? Idrissa made an allusion to that. Maybe at some point we won't need to have these very rural Excel and measurements that we have on the ground. So from the standard, what's your opinion and how open are you on that?
Who wants to?
Yeah, I'll try to answer both questions. So regarding the on-site visit, I really do believe that once we start implementing this type of systems, of digitized verification, then we will need to change how we verify right now the projects. So it's actually right now it's focused on exactly going on the visit and doing what the project developer already did. Actually, in the future, when you are looking at data, the first step would be to analyze if that data is plausible data, if that data is correct, And then if there is not enough data to say that that data is correct, then you would need to go on an on-site bit because then the data is false. Yeah. So, but if the data is plausible, I do believe that then the new methodologies will need to go in another way, and the BBVs need to adapt to these new methodologies in a way of focusing not on reading PDDs, focusing more on analyzing data, analyzing algorithms, and analyzing results, finding the problems or wrong data, and then going to check why that was, and sampling some examples. No, not everything. That's for your answer. And for you, yeah, so actually right now we are implementing some solutions, specifically for one example that I can tell. So we are a software provider, actually to standards. What we are doing, we took all the PDDs from all the projects and all the SDG tools from all these standards in the world, and we fed them through an AI, for example, and we tried to make this AI analyze if they could check which projects do comply with specific SDGs, for example. That's our work. That's very difficult for standards to go by or to go through. That's very difficult. And now that what we are developing for the standards is that they have a dashboard, and they can like upload all the information about the project, and then they have a dashboard that guides them what could be right, what could be wrong about the project. Of course, we are doing it in parallel so that the standards still review everything, but I believe in that in the future that will actually boost the speed, and that will bring actually more projects into the pipeline. And that's when I was saying before that in the future we should be issuing credits actually on a monthly basis or on a daily basis, and that's when we get to scalability. And yeah, we need to leverage AI.
Yeah, just to add on what you said about do we really need to go to the field for validation or verification? For carbon data, we may have less of a need to go and check the validation or verification, especially if it's about the land-based projects. For industrial renewables, if the data are coming from sensors, sensor will self-validate itself, like whether I am on or I am off. So just to go and check for sensors may not require that field visit. However, there would be some circumstances because a massive, blackout has occurred in there, and now project proponents are claiming sensors are, project is still operational, but we don't have a data what to do. In that case, we definitely need to go visit the site and ensure that they are correct. In some other circumstances, if we think about some, small scale or large scale cookie stove projects, unless we put a video camera in each of the kitchen, we would not be able to know if those cookie stoves are actually operational, right? So we cannot eliminate the need for field visits for validation or for verification. However, there are certain tools. People are coming up with these all innovative ideas. I was on a call with one entity where they have created a system called Digital Runner. So a validator could be sitting anywhere. They would say, hey, go to that site, take a video and send it to me. Mm-hmm. So that is one way to bridge the gap. You are not physically present, but you are virtually present. That is something that can reduce the cost or burden on VVVs. In terms of community impact is important piece. Are people really benefiting from these projects? If we have to say, are there indicators of biodiversity? They are increasing or declining. We can see forest, but forest is not equivalent to biodiversity, right? So we want to ensure the biodiversity, water quality, these kind of issues. Some of the things we can still do from sensors, but they are going to be very expensive. So VVB, validation and verification will probably be needed there for, maybe at a less interval, because we have other metrics to validate that this indeed exists. But complete elimination of site visits, especially around CCB stuff, right? It's climate and community and biodiversity, may not be possible. For carbon, amount of carbon, if you are solely interested in carbon, we can achieve that. How open, the next question, how open are we with the AI? I think we should not be confused with if AI is new. AI has been in place for the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. It's just that now the computing power and data is so enormous that its availability has dramatically increased. Now everybody can run models. So it's a little bit, adoption has increased. That's all the difference is. In carbon world, we have been using remote sensing since the beginning of carbon market. We are actually using machine learning inside just to classify land. Whether you use supervised classification or unsupervised classification, that's AI already in there. Now, can we do much more than just the classification is probably what you wanted to ask from my take on the question. Yes. So how we can immediately use AI is, what if, let's relate these two questions together. Should we need to go visit the site for validation or verification? It's a big question, right? So let's say there is a project and there is a request for validation or verifications, and VVVs are now thinking, should I have to do it or not? Can we use AI in this case? For example, we can predict risk of error. We can predict, does the project exist? Are there problems in the data? What if we run AI on the data and then get an estimate from AI, this project is likely to exist, or this project may have some incorrect data. Let's do verify or not decision is based on output of the AI, right? But these are said very simply, but done quite, there is quite a difficulty in achieving this. To get started, we need to start reviewing all the projects, validation, verification, put an attribute or labeling, we call it, label them, and we say wrong project, right project. We have labeled them, we have trained our model, then only model can predict. So there is no such thing where we put a project and AI will tell us this is what you need to do. We have to build. Again, the key piece to build such a model is digitalization. So we are really talking about what we want to be there, and we are working on the basic steps of can we achieve that. So yes, I believe, yes, we are open to AI, we are working on it, we must work on it together, data, process, pipelines, and existing effort towards digitalization.
Thank you for all the panelists. One, okay.
Can you hear me? Great. So in the context of the digitalization of methodologies on platforms like Guardian on Hedera, what does that mean for you? And maybe starting with Mr. Sharma from Verra, what does that mean for financial auditability? Like, what does it open it up? How does it shift the conversation or create new opportunities with that digitization?
That's a good question. Financial transparency may be broken down into multiple pieces. If we are talking about what was the cost of the project, what was the revenue from the project in terms of carbon revenue, and how much of the investment went into the ground community, that can be achieved because we will be able to track them down. But the problem to achieve that is there is no requirements on standards or so to disclose those financial measures. So this is not a technical issue. This is more of a fundamental issue of how people like their investment to be disclosed or not disclosed. Technologically, it's possible with the digitalization. All we have to do is require every actors to, enter the information. So I don't know if I can answer that question, but technologically, it is possible. But some investor would like to keep that as a secret. So
Actually, so one of the standards we work with, Ser Carbono, is developing, or it's gather a team of different people. Alcott is on that process of developing a financial disclosure methodology. So it's an optional methodology. So because you cannot like oblige anybody to disclose all their finances. But this is an opportunity for project developers to show their efforts and how they are actually bringing impact in the community. And we are very confident that that will bring then more value to those, to the credits of those specific projects that apply the financial disclosure. That's very important. And technologically speaking, it's very easy. So that's not a question. Thank you.
just to add on that same topic, we are currently in the voluntary space, and then since all these transactions occur not in a publicly available exchanges, even Vera doesn't have a transparency of the amount of dollar value or monetary unit that was used for, retiring the credits and so on. So it's hard at this moment.
Okay, I just wanted to give the floor to Ariana because of a gender balance issue. She is the only woman in the panel, so for her last words, please, before we close, if you have any issue to address.
I don't. I mean, I think, well, put me on the spot. I think the standardization of information seems to be a large issue, both in terms of following the frameworks and the recommendations from governing bodies and from these VVBs, and something that I think is really interesting, an opportunity perhaps and I'll speak from the AI perspective, but generative AI and large language models actually provide an opportunity to standardize data and to standardize information in a way that is far more efficient. And so I think that if we think about using tools to empower people to get the information that they need to actually qualify for the different regulations that are coming from these governing bodies, I think that is a great opportunity. So it's not just the synthesis or the analysis from the outputs, but actually enabling users to have the tools to be able to generate the documentation that they need to prove their information, I think is a great thing that we can all look into. So.
Thank you for all the panelists, and I think we have, from our West African perspective, a bright future in terms of streamlining, in terms of market integrity, scaling up of verification and validation. I think digital solution can be really helpful for us. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I learned a lot, and I would like to give a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
And thank you very much to Usman, panelists. One more round of applause for Usman for hosting a great panel. And with that, we're going to go to our next lightning talk. Our lightning talk is going to be over here, talking about GCR, Global Carbon Registry, based out of Hong Kong, talking about what that verification process looks like in a demonstration. And we'll be back here in about 12 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you. Hey, can we get a picture of the panel real quick before you?